So with that, let's get kicked off here. So again, this is a picture of me, this Jeff Williams, VP of Industry Solutions, and a picture of Nicole. We're both on video as well. She's a marketing manager here at Alvia. And the topic of today's webinar is Modern Investor Experience Masterclass. We've been doing these webinars, like I mentioned, we've had great success. The feedback has been good, and we've learned a lot from you all. And what we realize is, we as a software vendor have been talking for quite some time about the sort of concept of LP engagement and the opportunity presented via technology to sort of differentiate and improve, and especially now in a COVID world. And what we realize is that we probably could go even more specific and start to sort of make some recommendations of what we've seen be successful with clients of ours and what we've sort of seen in the market. So the agenda here is just kind of run through a few of those best practices, hopefully give you something to kind of think about, and certainly reach out to us, again, not only via questions, but at any point, if there's anything more that we can sort of share with you. But a couple of things here. So, we're big on the sort of concept technology-wise of the LP portal being the sort of center of that relationship with LPs and with prospects from a technology perspective. This probably the sort of most often used kind of best practice, leveraging kind of CRM type applications to send emails and to drive some engagement and awareness there. A relatively new one still, but accelerated by COVID, engagement with video. And then lastly, sort of what becomes possible with the ability to kind of track engagement and actions that can be taken as a result. So that's the plan here. And I'd love to start my slides here, if you've been with us for a couple of these, with a quote. This one came August 4th on KKR's earnings call. And one of the questions from one of the analysts was, what do you attribute the fundraising success that KKR had during the second quarter to? And here's the answer. In short, the sort of extra effort to sort of communicate and be transparent with both fundraising prospects and limited partners, which are sort of the same thing a little bit, was something that sort of jumped out right away as the first answer to this question. So found it very interesting. I think that a lot of people have sort of seen this in industry articles and are paying attention. We are thrilled because, again, we think that there's huge opportunity, and it's only been accelerated in a sort of post-COVID world. So with that, I'm going to jump in and we're going to look at a few slides here. I am going to kind of show you some stuff here. So I won't slide you to death here, but we'll definitely jump over and show you some things. So, I think as the foundation here, what we want to establish is the ability for sort of technology to be the sort of center of the place, one-stop shop-wise, that LPs and prospects can go to sort of get any sort of information they're looking for, and to do it in many ways, in many cases in a self-service way. So portals act as a one-stop shop, historical, current documents, so everything in one place. So believe it or not, and especially from my experience, LPs do need to go back for things, and not only is it a sort of missed opportunity to sort of wow them, but in many cases create some work for you to have to sort of respond to a request to provide something that goes back historically. This one, again, is sort of newer. We're going to elaborate on it and talk about it, but started to see a lot of opportunity for multimedia. And, I think that we're seeing examples of certainly annual meetings that are having to move to a sort of virtual kind of video environment. We're also just seeing some excellent opportunities for using video to provide quarterly or monthly sort of updates to prospects and to limited partners. And those can be sort of kind of a little bit more horizontal and generic, or they can be specifically targeted and individual to LPs, but certainly an amazing opportunity to remove the sort of distance, even if physical, and sort of feel like we can still engage and interact there. And then reporting availability as well. This is just that concept we've talked a lot about of sort of self-service, especially as it relates to data, as a way to, again, minimize that sort of, burden of providing that stuff and going through that motion, but also to just kind of wow LPs and make things available to them at their own sort of discretion and availability. So the LP portal is really kind of the center of this entire concept, and we're going to kind of jump into a few of these things. So and talk about why the portal is an ideal place for much of this to sort of funnel through. So again, here's probably the sort of most common and most enduring sort of method that we've seen, very mainstream, but just sort of the concept of email communication, right? So whether it's individual kind of one-off emails, what we're referring to here is really sort of something a little bit sort of broader that doesn't mean taking the time to sort of key up an email for everybody, but using the opportunity to kind of touch people, provide updates, generate some awareness. So, we're talking things like firm highlights, new employees, new investments, new fund closings, and then, thought leadership, what's happening in the market. If you go back and read the transcript of that KKR earnings call, there are some specifics in there in the answer to that question about, being pretty honest and transparent about where there's some opportunity, but also where there's, the need to be a little bit defensive and how the portfolio is shaping out.
I do want to jump into and kind of talk marketing angle. With a lot more firms having to do things virtually, you're not meeting in person, creating a newsletter is probably one of the best ways you can stay in front of your investors. Instead of doing that standard one-off email anytime there's a fund closure, we highly recommend getting on a cadence, a monthly cadence, or maybe even a quarterly cadence, whatever's going to work for your firm. But sharing those highlights, it doesn't have to just stop at when you guys are announcing a new fund. It can also be highlighting a new employee. It can be highlighting if anyone in your firm was featured in a podcast or another article. This is you're still putting yourself in the forefront of your investors, and you're kind of driving that value to them that this is why they're doing business with you. And the last point here on this is differentiate with technology, utilize that LP portal. Kind of going back to that first slide, a lot of what we've seen for firms is they might start off with a Dropbox, maybe even Box, and those tools are absolutely wonderful. I use them in my personal life, but I think for private equity or venture capital, they're gonna need something a little bit more secure, and you're gonna want something that has versatility. And so hopping back to that first slide and between this slide, that versatility of having multimedia, being able to share those historical documents, everything being secure and a one-stop shop, you can really tie the two of these together in quite nicely.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. Spoken from a true outstanding marketer. So absolutely. And actually on the point of Dropbox, I did want to just make one sort of addition to that. So I also use Dropbox actually pretty religiously and pay for it in my personal life. I think that there's a huge distinction. We do see it's an obvious sort of solution. Okay, hey, well, we need to share information there. And what we sort of see as a distinction is sharing versus collaborating. And Dropbox, Box, tools like that are oftentimes, sort of collaboration tools. And the distinction is that, it may be, features may be such that others with whom you've shared information are actually encouraged to share it with someone else, or the sort of disastrous potential that things are sort of syncing to a desktop behind the scenes. So just a couple of distinctions there, I think, in sort of the concept of sharing versus collaborating that I think are important, and we're going to sort of talk more about that here on this next slide here with video. So again, huge opportunity to remove the sort of distance that is felt during a time like this. And I've made the comment multiple times, but even for ourselves to sort of, be interacting with our clients and with prospects. Historically, it was, sort of a lot of Zoom, but sort of no video at all. And it's been amazing to see for everybody sharing video, and certainly the need to sort of see other people is one part driving that. But I think that, we're sort of coming into this period where this is now sort of mainstream and acceptable, and it's actually very efficient as well. And so why not take advantage of that to, record, again, portfolio updates. Hey, here's sort of, where we're seeing some weakness. Here's where we're seeing some opportunity. And here's sort of what to expect, right? I mean, whether it's sort of broad and available to all prospects and all LPs, or whether there are tailored messages, we've seen some great success with this. And going back to the sort of Dropbox example, I did want to point this out. So, I personally recall when the sort of video feature was requested in our portal product, and my immediate thought was, hey, there's, a million video sort of options out there, right? Like the video sort of problem has been well solved, especially by the likes of like YouTube. And in digging into it, what you realize is that unless you want, prospects and limited partners to sort of sign up for a Google account and authenticate that way, in which case then you sort of individually take the time to share it with each of those people and to swap personal email addresses, then your only option is to then sort of just make it delisted, but share the link. And again, in that sort of situation, you do end up with very little control over who shares that link with other people. So just situations where video isn't the only thing. It really becomes about what's the context of how the video and the content is being shared, and some things that we'd encourage people to think about. Also, part of the reason that we're in the business of developing software that's very specific to these use cases. So video is a feature of ShareSecure. We've had great success with it. Feedback has been great. I'm going to show it to you actually here in a minute because there's some pretty neat features.
Yeah, and another point, that video is great for your, video is great for anyone because they can re-listen to it. And with everybody working remotely, maybe they've got children at home and they're doing schoolwork at home. They can't quite listen to a live video, but maybe a recorded video will allow them a little bit more flexibility to hear those really important parts that you want your investors to take home with them.
Absolutely. And if you're doing any of these things live, do make sure that you're recording them just for that value alone, to be able to provide them to people who may not have been able to attend. In fact, as evidenced by today, a whole bunch of registrants that we understand and do ourselves, which is, you register and you can't make it, but you're going to get the recording. Anyway, so hello to those folks, but also, a great opportunity again to sort of leverage the content and to kind of make it quick and dirty, but provide a huge amount of value to the person on the other end. And then lastly, in the sort of points here, and then I'll jump over and kind of show you a few things here and get into some specifics. This is all about engagement, right? I mean, Nicole is a very experienced and what I would classify as an outstanding marketer. And this is sort of natural for Nicole and her marketing counterparts to sort of understand where there is engagement. It's a little bit sort of new, perhaps to this market, but it's very, very important and extremely valuable to understand who's taking action, where people are engaging and where they're not. It provides a tremendous amount of opportunity to kind of develop the relationships as a result, and to really sort of take the action that you deem necessary. So if you know that a high value prospect is engaging with certain content, it does provide an outstanding opportunity to talk about that, or to reach out and say, hey, are there any questions? Is there anything else that's missing or that I can provide you with? And on the flip side, when they aren't engaging with the content, then to sort of handle that accordingly. So as we sort of step back and we think about it, what we're really saying, a couple examples here of some sort of best practices we see, you know, kind of across the board, the sort of funneling of things through a portal so that you can sort of get people in front of a single place where there's some technology behind it that can sort of make that stuff available to them, and they don't need to sort of go to different places. Emails, and then, you know, video. And as we sort of step back and look at all this, there's engagement sort of, you know, tracking throughout. So on this screen, you've got, for example, you know, email deliveries and views of certain things inside of the portal, and we're going to sort of be tracking that throughout, and that's really where the sort of value on this stuff is. So let's not get to questions quite yet. I'm going to share or make sure I get my correct screens shared here.
While Jeff is doing that, to add a couple more points on the reporting metrics, yes, it's wonderful to be able to see who is opening up those emails, but I can tell you from experience that at a past employer that I had noticed that we had a couple of users not opening up the emails. So I reached out to them personally and found out that they just really didn't know how. So getting those users or getting your investors caught up, kind of giving them that customer service so they can figure out how to use the portal or maybe see the emails will really make sure that your investment is going a long way. The other part to this, to the metrics piece that I wanted to add is we are testing all the time in marketing. We will, and I encourage firms to do this as well. If you are sending things out like a newsletter, test the subject line for the first month. And then if you're interested to see if there's different engagement rates, test a different subject line. It still needs to be the same day and same time, because then you won't know if it's the day or the time or if it's the title, but you can do those sort of things to test out if your email is working. And again, you could do that very same thing for days of the week. It took us a little while for our own personal newsletter at Altvia to figure out what that sweet spot was for our clients and anyone that's interested to learn about us. But once we found it, we've seen great open rates, and we just continue to live by that cadence.
Awesome. So good, Nicole. Thank you for that. And you know, how relevant is that stuff, especially, you know, if this stuff is new to you and to your firm. This is the sort of experience that is out there and provides the foundation to kind of get started immediately with some actionable stuff and get going. So I've jumped over, I've shared my screen. Nicole, are you able to see this screen okay?
Roger that.
All right, good. So what we're doing here, we can't do this webinar with all this amazing marketing advice without showing you and plugging some of our products just a little bit here, but we'll be brief. One of the features that we've developed, and again, sort of with this sort of engagement and this sort of leverage in mind, is the ability for our sort of relationship and CRM product to sort of not to make it easy to send information out. And effectively what we've got here is sort of the ability to kind of narrow down any criteria in the CRM that is the criteria which we want to use to send information and sort of, you know, present an opportunity for engagement. So what I've done here is I've pulled the contacts for all of the sort of organizations that we have in our CRM that we categorize as institutional investors. And my acronym here is days since last interaction. So what I've done here is I've sort of just queried the CRM and said, hey, I want those contacts and institutional investors that I haven't talked to in over 30 days. So that could be the criteria. The criteria could be people in a certain stage of a fundraising funnel. It could be a geographic area. It could be you know, something relationship wise or, you know, kind of coverage wise. It could be something, you know, entirely that you are interested in sort of narrowing down. The idea is let's use the technology where you're sort of classifying that, make it really easy for you to sort of narrow those people down and then send them an email. And so that's exactly what I've done here. You know, notice that at any point I can actually come back to this and just refresh this. So it's sort of like running a new query to get this information. And from there, it's just about, okay, I can sort of queue up my September newsletter. And now I'm just going to go ahead and add that list of people that that I had sort of queried to determine who I'd want to send this to. So, this might be, again, use case where, hey, we want to send this newsletter to people that we haven't talked to or had any sort of interaction with in over 30 days at institutionals. But certainly, you may want to send this to a broader group. The idea is that the technology is going to be the one that does that lifting, make it easy on you. I'm going to come in here and do, Nicole just sort of talked about testing subject lines. I'm going to make her grimace a little bit and just put probably a poor subject from a marketer's perspective. But I've got, kind of my list. I've, again, made it super easy here. I'll send it from me, or I can send it from sort of, IR at yourfirm.com. And then I've got my sort of newsletter template already lined up, so we could, kind of come in one time and maybe make some of this a little bit different here. So, idea here again, so I'm going to design this so that, I can start to kind of, move people to the portal. And so what I'll do here is I get through the wizard, I'll actually attach a document. I'm going to, again, that concept of one-stop shop, if this is relevant to send to them, then why not also parallel path it into the portal so that they can sort of, get it there, and so that you can understand and draw them into some of that content to be engaged with and understand how they're engaging with it. So quick kind of, just pass through here where we're sort of, highlighting some new personnel and just kind of, again, an update. So we'll skip through there. And what I'm going to do now is I'll go ahead and add an attachment here. And again, we'll kind of idea will be to push this to the portal, and we will, start to kind of get people in there, draw them in there for other stuff, maybe this as well, track the engagement. Also make it easy for them to sort of access this from an email as well, just the attachment, so it's nice and easy. So I'll sort of skip the rest from here. We have somebody without an email. Go ahead and hit send here. Excuse me. And then that's where you're going to start to sort of, see those charts where you're going to, kind of understand the opens and the views and clicks and things like that. So that's kind of your engagement point there. What I'm going to do next is flip over to just kind of give you a sense for what's going on here inside the portal. So I'm logged in here as sort of one of our users from a large institutional investors. And there's a couple things going on. If you've kind of been with us for any of these, or if you've seen these products before, you'll understand that, they're designed to be for these users. Very efficient, very simple, easy to use. Most importantly, very easy to find what they're looking for. So here's all the content. If I wanted to pull up annual meeting content, you'll notice a couple things. And sure enough, one of the things that I've got here is the ability to now sort of view that video. And, Nicole mentioned this, hey, they may not have an opportunity to watch this live. We're going to provide it for them sort of, here in that secure location where we can kind of control that information, but still, provide them useful features so they can kind of watch it sped up. They can also come back to it. So, if it's a long sort of 2-hour annual meeting presentation, they could come in, watch a little bit, leave, come back, and have their place sort of reserved. So a couple of features there. And then again, the sort of concept, which we didn't have too much in terms of the slides on, but the concept of just sort of providing them with, kind of self-serve, not only analytics, an example here of sort of a capital account statement where they can sort of, kind of slice and dice by fund themselves, but also getting into things like how the underlying portfolio is performing and maybe where there's some sort of weakness or some strengths as the result of COVID. So this is really the sort of information that people are wanting to understand and to receive in a time like this. And it's really the sort of opportunity to start to use technology to do it. Last thing I'll show you here, and then I'll stop for some questions, is just the kind of concept of, again, that engagement tracking. So what I'm going to do here is pull up sort of the administrator view of what you would be seeing in terms of, the sort of engagement with this content. And you'll notice that when I log in, I start to see in real time the ability here that Teresa Walker has logged in. She's watched our annual meeting video. She's looked at a couple of, the self-service data dashboards. And it might be a good opportunity for me to reach out and sort of do something as a result. So I'll stop there. Again, just kind of wrapping up the point of the engagement across the board, using the technology, being able to track it, and then raising big, massive funds very easily like KKR.
Before we get into questions, one thing I do want to leave listeners with is since COVID and kind of going back to that KKR quote, this COVID has really revolutionized how firms need to be handling their investors and their correspondents from here on out. I can't imagine a world of us going backwards, but firms that are performing, that are top tier, they are using technology to their advantage, and they're really coming out as market leading firms. And that's what investors are looking to. Whereas maybe some of the other technology or the lack of technology rather might be more in a developing situation. But if you guys have questions at all with us, please feel free to ask, so we can even maybe even from a consulting point of view, see what would do best for your team.
Yeah. By the way, as you were talking there, Nicole, I just sort of highlighted this bit from the transcript. Extremely powerful. I literally can't make this stuff up. It's Scott's words, not mine. But any questions? We'll stop here. Please